Hi, Dr. Addicts, and welcome to Sydney's audio-visual scrapbook. That's right, you're hearing me, yours truly, Sydney, through the use of lovely iMovie on my MacBook. For my final project, I decided to create an audio-visual scrapbook. You're probably wondering, what do you mean by that? What I mean is simply this is a culmination of all of the pictures and short little cinematic bits that I've taken from our trip from Greece and Barcelona as well. Here you'll see lots of music, lots of food, followed by some food reviews, and also just my glimpse into what the trip was like for me. I hope you enjoy this, and without further ado, let's get to it. First, our journey began in Barcelona, Spain. Our first stop led us to La Rambla, which was one of the main squares in the heart of Barcelona, Spain. What I quickly learned from seeing all of the people and all of the vendors was that this was most certainly one of Barcelona's huge cultural hubs. There were tourists and locals everywhere, scouting out early in the morning for all sorts of food, souvenirs, and even some entertainment depending on where you ventured into the square. It was early in the morning. Me and my roommates were very tired, but as soon as I saw this site, I knew that we were in for a very special trip. It was beautiful. The buildings were decked out in beautiful architecture, and the city itself was so serene, even in that little glimpse that we had in the morning. Little did I know, though, we would go to quite the most amazing market for some nice, tasty treats. This market was called El Mercat de la Boqueria. Yes, those are all juices, but just you wait, there's more. What you pictured here in front of you is the beautiful stained glass archway leading to El Mercat, one of Barcelona's oldest located markets. In the heart of Barcelona, Spain. When we think of a market, or when I think of a market at least, type of food that your mind think back to the Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia. My friends and my roommates were very tired in the morning, but in part because we just got off of a 7-hour long flight. You know that. But my point being, we were hungry and we wanted some tasty eats. And from some little research that we did on the plane and on the way to JFK Airport, we discovered this market. It was said to have many assorted types of food, from drinks to fish to meat. We were very excited to see what the market had to offer. And oh my, were we not disappointed. Pictured here were these tornadoes. Yes, you're seeing that right. They were potato chips spun all the way up a skewer. And oh my, I am so regretting not getting one. Now, you just heard me say that I didn't regret getting a tornado, but look at these candies. When I saw their vibrant color and all of the gummies and licorice and hard candies they had to offer, I was like a little kid in the candy store. Oh my gosh, it was so hard for me to not get a whole bag. But it was only day one, and I knew Barcelona and our trip would have so much more to offer. Alrighty, it's time for you to brace yourself, because this is the very first of my food reviews in this audio-visual scrapbook. Yes, you heard that right. I took a picture of almost every single thing I ate on our trip, and I will be reviewing it on a scale of 1 to 10. There were some good ones and some okay ones, not my favorite, but as a foodie and as someone who loves to eat, I couldn't wait to see what food lied abroad. This picture here is a Spanish empanada. Of course I had to get one of the staples, being in Barcelona. While empanadas have their own choices of meat, whether it's from poultry to beef or pork, I decided to go with a Spanish sausage empanada. As you can see here in the picture, it had onions and sausage, and it was encrusted in this wonderfully put pastry. I was so excited to try it, and honestly, my tummy was growling, not only from seeing all the food in the market, but just because we only had one meal, well, I guess 2 meals on the airplane. So, looking at this empanada and tasting it, it was very savory. The sausage was tender and a little more on the spicier side. It was definitely more of a savory bite to eat for breakfast, but I would give it a solid 6 out of 10. Following our trip to the market, it was time to go exploring. As we wandered beyond the market, we encompassed this square. I remember taking the tour from our 2 tour guides. I remember the one girl's name was Simone, but I unfortunately forget the other girl's name since I am making this scrapbook a little after our trip. However, they were both super sweet, and they gave us a full glimpse into the history of Barcelona, discussing even these beautiful oil lamps pictured here in the square. We then ventured into this wondrous street and some of these streets in Barcelona. They were narrow, but each unit had a balcony, and there were so many plants. It truly made my heart happy. And here you can see us walking down the street. Once our tour of the city was complete, my roommates and I were at a conflict and a crossroads with what we decided to do. We decided to start looking at museums around the city and figured that would be a good place to start. And then we struck gold. Yes, you're seeing this picture right. We went to a museum based on Picasso. And let me tell you, these paintings were beautiful. While some might know Picasso for his abstract art, we saw beautiful classical paintings, as these women pictured there, and as this woman pictured here. Yes, it was different, but it was art, and honestly, I love seeing art. This gallery wall was one of my favorites, with all of the pictures of florals painted, as well as some of Picasso's similar strokes seen in this painting here. With the mountains and the range and all the shades of green and brown, it was beautiful. What was even prettier was this next room that we ventured into, with this decked out ceiling, with the crown molding and the chandelier. I was awestruck. I took a photo of this next painting because it reminded me of a stargazer lily, and that's the flower my dad gets for my mom for their anniversary. Fun fact. This next painting also reminded me of Picasso, as you can see his signature there, but there was all sorts of fruits in an abstract form. For our second day in Barcelona, we ventured to the outskirts of the city to see La Sagrada de Familia, one of the most known churches in the world. When I took my Spanish 4 class my senior year of high school, my Spanish teacher told us about this church. Yes, I've seen pictures online before I ventured to this place of worship. But when we got there, wow. Well, you'll see. While that clip you saw was the front of the church, this picture I took here was the back of La Sagrada de Familia. But what made this even more intriguing and fascinating to me was the different types of architecture and pillars that were displayed on all sides of the church. Here, as the image moves downward, you can see the storyline of Jesus Christ, which, upon first glance, you wouldn't really notice. But after a tour guide told the story, it all made sense. This picture here is a model of La Sagrada de Familia. Now, as one can see, there is a gray part of the model, but then there was also a yellow part of the model. You can actually see your face half zoomed in on the left side of this picture. My apologies for photobombing you, Dr. Addicts, but I really wanted to get a good shot of this model. My grandparents told me about this when they visited Barcelona and La Sagrada de Familia. Unfortunately, when they visited, they couldn't go inside the church, but they were able to see this outside. What our tour guide told us was fascinating. This model depicted the church. The gray parts were already built. Hundreds and hundreds of years of construction. Centuries upon centuries of this vision by Gaudi. The yellow portions of the church, seen in this model, are still yet to be completed. Because of COVID, they're now expecting it to be complete around 2035, I believe is when she said. But seeing the church's grand stature and how this place was so well visited, I wouldn't have any doubts that it would be even more beautiful when the time would come. When we entered the church, I was awestruck. It was beautiful. Wide ceilings, tall ceilings, stained glass on all the windows. And then I took this picture right here, and it just makes my heart happy because every detail of the architecture of this church was amazing. And there's a statue of Gaudi to dedicate this church because it was his vision that made this into fruition. Here I tried to take a picture of the center of the church where they had Jesus Christ hanging on a cross in the little area where people could worship. This picture was also really interesting because our tour guide mentioned how when the sun rises and it comes from the east, you see cool colors. Whereas if it rises and then it sets on the west, you see the hotter colors, reds, oranges, yellows, from the west windows. I took this little clip here. I put it in slow-mo so you could really kind of see the stained glass because for me that was one of the most amazing features of this place. I'm not a very religious person, but when I tell you I did not want to leave this site because I felt at peace. I felt calm and I felt that I was in something, like I said to the tour guide at the time, I was in something and I was a part of something that was way bigger than myself. And this was by far the best thing that we saw in Barcelona, in my opinion. With the rest of the day ahead of us, and from planning on the way to JFK for our flight to Barcelona, my roommates and I decided that we would visit and get tickets to go see Park Güell. We had to take a metro and a bus to get here. It was a bit a ways from the city, but it was absolutely stunning. Here, I took a picture of this archway, and yes, those are rocks. I was kind of afraid one would fall on me, to be honest, but it didn't, so that was good. Here's what it looks like on the outside of it, but it was this archway, and then people could walk on top as well. And what laid on top, as you will see in this next photo here, was this breathtaking view of the city. Yes, there I am looking at it. Don't judge. This is one of my favorite pictures I took. I can't believe I got an action shot of a bird flying with the city of Barcelona in the background. And if you look even closer in the left side of the picture, you can see that towering pointing figure. Yep, that's La Sagrada de Familia. Here, I took another picture of birds. Like, come on, they're so cool. We don't have green birds in Pennsylvania. I had to. This building was actually one of Gaudi's homes. Yes, the roof was all out of mosaics. It was the prettiest thing I've seen. And we got to go in it. Then there was this part with the columns and mosaics lined all around the exterior. It was absolutely beautiful. Now this was one of the ceilings of the buildings. As you can see, mosaics all around. I love mosaics, so seeing this part of the park was one of my favorites, including this little guy here. everybody wanted to take pictures of him. So I was only able to get this one with a lot of people around it. But yeah, it's a cool mosaic lizard. Like, who doesn't love that? I love mosaics. So, and then of course, there were beautiful flowers all around the park. It was such a great time to just go and walk and talk more and learn more about my roommates and see the beautiful nature that Europe had to offer. I could not ignore these flowers. They were beautiful and pink. After a long day of walking and very sore feet, it was time for us to go see the concert. Now, I know you're probably tired of me saying how beautiful and how gorgeous everything is, but come on, you cannot make these pictures up. When we walked into this concert hall, I almost laughed at its beauty. Everything from the ceilings to the seats to the organ in the center of the stage, it was, you just can't make it up. It was absolutely gorgeous. Then I saw this on the ceiling again. What I noticed about all of these buildings was that they all had some sort of stained glass. And I'm a sucker for stained glass, so of course I had to get a picture. In the next clip you'll see here, I tried to get a scale of what it looked like from our seats. We were on the second row, right in front of the clarinets. I zoomed in a bit here, but it focused on the chair and the stand. But you can see all those statues around the chairs of the stage. Here's another clip I tried to take, but this time I went all the way up to the ceiling. Did I almost break my back filming this? Maybe, but you didn't know because you were sitting in front of me. But I mean, that organ, beautiful. The chairs at the top, where I'm assuming the choir would stand during choral concerts, beautiful. I was so happy to be there. Now, this picture I took was at the culmination of the concert, at the concert's finale. I am zooming in here because I enjoyed the concert so much, but the thing that captivated my attention throughout all of the music, all of the sounds, the frequencies, the loud clashes of percussion, the thing that held my attention was the man being the principal and concertmaster clarinetist. I loved watching him. He moved with the music in such a way that only musicians could understand when they played the notes on a piece of paper. He was enticing and he captivated my attention the whole time. Not only did he capture my attention the whole time, but as a musician, I couldn't help but have such respect for how he conveyed the music and what he was feeling. The concert itself was amazing. All of the musicians were so talented, and I loved hearing the pieces written and composed by Spanish composers. It is now time for another Sydney food review. In this picture, you see a traditional Spanish dish called paella. Paella can be made with any type of meat, just like an empanada, ranging from pork to chicken to beef. And in this case, I got seafood. So I ordered a seafood paella. It came with shrimp, mussels, and rice, vegetables, and all cooked in this sauce. And if you were to think of an American equivalency dish, I would say that the closest thing would be what we think of being jambalaya. Except the Spanish call it paella, of course. Overall, this wasn't my favorite dish of the trip. I unfortunately do not like peas and I'm not a huge vegetable fan. So I kind of picked those out from my dish. I was also hesitant about the shrimp because I didn't know how to dehead them. And when I got my dish and I saw that I had a whole 2 shrimp on my plate, it scared me a little. But overall, I ate maybe about a third of the dish. And I would give it a rating of, I don't know, a 5 out of 10. And the next clip, you'll see me asking my friends what I got as well. Maddie, what did you get? What did you get, Maddie?
I got the mixed paella.
Nice. Patrick, what did
Spaghetti
you get?
carbonara.
Beautiful.
What
Jillian, what did you get?
I got the mixed. You can see
Nice. As Jeff Goldblum's character in Thor Ragnarok would say, it's main event time, and we were on our way to our main destination of the trip, Athens, Greece. Now, of course, when you go traveling, to put it quite frankly, shit happens. And you're probably wondering why you're seeing arrows drawn on this picture. In all honesty, I took this picture when we were waiting in the line to check our baggage for our Aegean Airlines flight to Athens. And if you can remember, as I'm sure you can, our van service to the Barcelona airport was late. It caused all of us a little bit more stress than we would have liked, and we showed up later and we saw this huge line to check our bags in. And I'm not gonna lie, I was fearful for sure that we were gonna miss our flight. But thankfully we didn't, and we were able to make it in time. But I did send this picture to my parents, and I drew the arrows showing how many people were in front of us for us to check our bags. Now, you can't judge me for this next picture. I mean, come on. I was sitting on the airplane, and I saw this plane next to us, and it was too good not to take a picture of. For this flight, I was so excited because I finally had a window seat, and I could see the beautiful blue waters that our plane was soaring over. Oh, I loved it. Next, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Patrick because he put us all on this beverage pictured here. I had to put this in the video because it honestly was one of the most interesting drinks that I had on the trip. When we went to Barcelona, Patrick said that we should all try Aquarius, which was their version of Gatorade, essentially. And it was so good. I loved it. And honestly, I'm kind of tempted to look it up on Amazon to see if I can get some here in the US because it was very tasty, and I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to try something new. Alas, we arrived in Athens, Greece, and our hotel was in the heart of the city. And here was one of the very first pictures I took of the Parthenon and all of the nature that surrounded it. Here was the view from our hotel's rooftop bar, and little did I know that this was an indication our trip was going to be really sweet. It's time for another Sydney food review. That's right. Maybe I shouldn't have done that jingle, but you get the idea. It's now time for another food review. And pictured in front of you was the shrimp orzo that I got at the restaurant on the rooftop bar of our hotel. It came with shrimp and then orzo pasta, and it was wonderfully seasoned. This had to be one of the best dishes that I probably had on the trip. Although there were so many good ones, I lost track very quickly. Yes, the shrimp came headed, but the heads were easily detachable, and I was able to eat the shrimp with my pasta this time. The dish was so savory and was seasoned to perfection. I definitely think if this was placed in front of Gordon Ramsay, he would have to like it. My only thought and kind of complaint was that I wish there was more shrimp, but I kid you not when I say that I devoured this meal. When I think about what I would rate it, easy. I would definitely give it an 8.5 out of 10. I would have ate this dish again in a heartbeat if we went to eat at the rooftop bar. But let's just say the rest of the nights when we went to the rooftop bar, we just had some nice drinks. That's all I'll say. Here's a picture of me on the rooftop bar with my roommates who are behind the camera, but as you can see, the Parthenon was right behind us, and it was an amazing view. One thing I definitely noticed from us being in Europe was all of the stray little kitties that we found on the sides of the road. I got a great action shot of this guy right here with a beautiful brindle fur coat, and then these two cuties appeared. And believe me, those weren't the only ones lurking around. Following our encounter with the cats, we went to the Museum of Ancient Musical Instruments. As our group entered the museum, we were greeted by drums. Here, you see 3 hand-held drums, as we know them to be today as tambourines. Not only were there these drums, but there were plenty others that I'll talk about shortly. What made this museum really fascinating to me was to see basically the ancestors of our modern day band instruments, whether it was percussive instruments like the drums that I will talk about later, like I said in the first clip, or the tambourines that we saw in that first picture that I took. But here you can see what looks to be the great ancestors of what we know as our flute and clarinet family, woodwind instruments with holes that are used to play certain pitches. These holes are covered by our fingers, and to the very right of the screen you can see what looks to be ancient bone flutes. In this picture here, you can see what also appears to be another ancestor of a woodwind instrument. What I found really fascinating about this was the detail that was carved into the wood, as you see the flowers rising up towards what looks to be a reed opening. While we see reeds today as a staple of woodwind instruments, back then it was only the beginning for how they made sound. Now, you only see the top of this instrument here, but as the image gradually lowers, you will see that it is a picture of one of the very first ancient bagpipes. Now, you're also probably wondering why there is a bagpipe included in the midst of all of these photos of ancient musical instruments. While we think of bagpipes to be derived mainly from Scotland, the bagpipes actually reached Greece from Asia in the 1st or 2nd century of AD. And there were 2 types of bagpipes: the Sambonia, which derived from the islands of Greece, and the Gaida from Macedonia and Thrace. These instruments were made by the players themselves. The bag, as you can see here, was being made from the skin of a goat or a kid, which is specifically treated, and then the mouthpiece is made from cane, wood, or bone. And then these 2 types of bagpipes differ essentially in the part that produces the ultimate sound. With the bagpipes derived from the islands, otherwise known as the Sambonia, there are 2 wooden cane pipes that are derived from the same kind of wood that you saw with the ancient ancestors of the clarinet in the previous pictures that I showed. These 2 wooden cane pipes had single beating reeds, and they were attached with wax to a grooved wooden base. On the one pipe, the musician plays the melody, and on the other, it would play a main drone. Drone meaning one singular sustained note. This instrument was usually played solo or together with an instrument called the tumboy, or a small drum, or what we know as a lyre, or as the Greek knew it to be, the lyra, which was a pear-shaped fiddle. In the case of the other bagpipe from the land of Macedonia and Thrace, the gaida, the 2 wooden tubes are independent of each other. The shorter tube is used for the melody, and it had 7 pitch holes in a format of a 6+1. The second tube, the bori or basso, was longer, and it usually had 3 sections and also sounded like a drone. This type of bagpipe was played solo or accompanied by a tumbeke, the wali, or the hourglas, which were the types of tambourine you saw in the very first picture. As my eyes wandered beyond the glass cases of all of these ancient instruments, I found this gold mine. As you can see here, these are probably the very early descendants of what we know today as a double reed instrument, whether it be an oboe, an English horn, or maybe even a bassoon. What was most interesting about these was that they had a singular tube pointing down just like a recorder or a clarinet would. And then they had the traditional double reed at the top. Not only did this instrument captivate my attention as soon as I passed its case, but it is also one of the very traditional Greek musical instruments that are weaved into its history. The design of this instrument, as you can see here, was absolutely beautiful, with detailing around the body to the neck of the instrument with all of its strings. This here was one of the very first early versions of the Greek lyre. As you can see, it wasn't what we see in our textbooks as the lyre that most of the gods or goddesses may have played, but rather an evolved version that kind of resembles what we know to be as either a banjo or a guitar in modern instrument terms. As I was about to make my way to the museum's exit, I came across this glass case that encompassed 5 different types of Greek drums. While I don't know which drum matches the name of the descriptions alongside it, I will briefly read a little bit of each of these descriptions to you. The first drum description, or I should say the name of the first drum, was the tumbaleke, known as the pottery drum. This instrument plays the rhythmic accompaniment to various melodic instruments of northern Greece, or Macedonia or Thrace, and of the Aegean Islands and of Asia Minor. This instrument is made in different sizes and is played with a variety of techniques, anything from using both hands or even, in a very rare sense, 2 small sticks. The next drum, the douali, is just known as a standard traditional Greek drum. This was played in Byzantium and is the principal instrument or rhythmic accompaniment all over continental Greece. This instrument was found in a great variety of sizes and is still played to this day, hanging from the left shoulder with 2 drumsticks, a thick and heavy one in the right hand of the musician, and a thin one in the left hand of the musician. The third drum was the tombi. This was essentially a small douali, or a smaller traditional Greek drum. This drum played the rhythmic accompaniment to the melodic instruments of the Greek islands. It is played with both hands of the musician and using only 2 small drumsticks which beat only on one skin surface. The fourth drum, the defi, was known as the frame drum. This ancient instrument was known in Byzantium as the sistrum or plethia, and in modern Greece as the dele or the kolhoris in Macedonia and Thrace. This instrument can come with or without jingles on its wooden frame, and it plays the rhythmic accompaniment to most of the melodic instruments throughout all of Greece. The final instrument, and the final drum in this case, was the tambotsa. The tambotsa is essentially a drum with a sieve, with a skin stretched over one end. It is used as a rhythmic instrument in Cyprus, and it is played with both hands or 2 small sticks. Our next journey was to the Greek Archaeological Museum. Because I took so many pictures throughout this trip, I'm going to try my best to do a voiceover for all of the pictures of all of the objects that I saw that captivated my eye in this museum. Believe me, there are a lot, and I don't remember the exact history of them, so buckle up, because here we go. The first item I saw was this vase. It was painted with black paint, and yes, it is to scale. That is the size of a normal human next to this thing. It was massive. I then came across this remnants of a pillar. As you can see, the stone etched in detail, most presumably of a Greek god. I then saw this statue in the following room, and I loved it. It was regal and beautiful, and it was of goddess Athena. I then came across another beautiful remnant of a pillar. This one, more presumably of a soldier holding a spear, standing guard. This museum had a lot of interesting pieces, including this bust of a Greek god. I believe this was Zeus, but I could be incorrect. I then saw another beautiful vase of these soldiers marching. I love seeing all the vases in this museum because they were simply gorgeous with their markings. My journey then took me to one of the bases of one of the columns, which showed 2 Greek soldiers wrestling in what was presumed to be a competition. I then found another remnant of another pillar, this time not as full as the other one, but still pretty remarkable when you think about the history. This statue was in the middle of one of the rooms, and it was of a warrior in the stance to throw a javelin. This was a bust of Zeus. So obviously I was incorrect the first time I mentioned whose bust that was. I believe that was Hera, and this was Zeus. I then found another remnant, and as you can see here, this one was a little more worn down, but then again, seeing all these pieces from history was simply amazing. This statue was of none other but Aphrodite. She was gorgeous. This is a bust of Hera, Zeus's wife, and I thought it was gorgeous. Shame on Zeus. Next, I came across this statue of a young boy riding a horse. I also included another picture of the horse, which I believed is following this image, where I got it from the front. There we go. I mean, the detail and the intricacy of the hooves to the nose was simply amazing. I then found this guy in another room. I thought he was a cool lion, so I took a picture, but you can also see how his legs were pieced back together. This was in the interior of one of the upper rooms of the museum, and it was ancient wall painted, still to this day, in bright, vibrant colors. Here's another picture of a vase, as you can see this one being pieced back together from remnants and pieces of maybe when it was crumbled. This was a picture towards the staircase going to the second level. I thought it was a beautiful picture with vibrant colors, so I had to snap a quick picture before I headed down. This actually was part of one of the portions of the museum where there was a Greek space part. That little flag there was taken to the moon. Go figure, right? Dun da da da! Food review. It's time for another Sydney food review. Now this was the main star of the show for me throughout this trip to Greece. After the archaeological museum, my roommates and I were starving. And we had a recommendation from Tong to go try out this restaurant that served gyros. Now, I've heard of gyros or gyros here in America. And of course, hearing from Tong that this was the correct pronunciation, my roommates and I knew we had to go. It got his recommendation after all. When we arrived, there were so many people sitting outside, and the smells and the aromas emerging from the kitchen made my tummy grumble so much. I was hungry. Now, while I'm not a very fancy person when it comes to my toppings or what is included in sandwiches, I decided to go with tomato, lettuce, and onion inside my gyro, and decided to forego the traditional tzatziki, in part because I'm not a huge fan of mayonnaise. But here you can see I got a pork gyro with french fries, lettuce, onion, and tomato. And oh my goodness, it was the most delicious thing I had on the whole trip. And my roommates knew it too. Gyros became my whole obsession. Anywhere that we went in Greece, if the restaurant had a pork gyro, I was all in. This by far deserved a 10 out of 10 from me. I forgot to also take a picture of the one place in Santorini where we had another gyro at a restaurant called Why Not. That gyro was better than this one pictured here, but again, gyros, 10 out of 10, my new obsession. Another thing that stood out to me about Athens was its buildings as well, as we passed this one square, heading back to our hotel after a long day. We also stopped inside this music shop, and look at all of these lyres. All of them had such detail, and look at the little tiny ones, they were so cute. I never thought I would visit a Greek music store, but here I was. And of course it was only fitting that I had to take a picture. You know what time it is. Cue the jingle. Food review, food review. It's a Sydney food review. In front of you, you see here what looks like a pretty plain dish. But I promise you, this dish was anything but plain. As you could probably infer from the first bit of food that I got from being in Europe, at the El Mercat de la Bolqueria in Barcelona, I love sausage. So when I heard that Greece also had its own type of sausage, of course I had to try it. And oh my goodness, the sausage came out so well cooked. I mean, looked at the char at those, and then the fries were good, but I think America kind of has Europe beat on the fries, I'm not gonna lie. But the sausage, oh my gosh, I loved it. Not only was it not immensely spicy, but it was packed with so much flavor. It was so savory, and I honestly wish I had more than 3 of those. I would have taken a whole plate if I had the chance. It was definitely one of my more favorite dishes on the trip. Of course, besides the gyro I already talked about a minute and a half about. But in total, I would definitely say I give this dish a solid 9 out of 10. If you go to Greece, try their sausage. Oh my gosh, you won't regret it. Here's a quick picture of my roommates and I at the restaurant. It's one of my favorite selfies that we took on the trip, and I loved these girls. It was a great time. Oh, here we go. Food review, food review. It's time for a food review. Now, this was a dessert after a long day, so I'm going to be very quick and frank. It's nothing special. We have it here in America too, but I was craving some strawberry Nutella waffles, and oh, it was so good. I mean, look at all the Nutella they put on there. My only thing is that I wish it had more strawberries, but overall, solid 8 out of 10. Before I knew it, it was Acropolis Day. First, our tour guide took us to Dionysus's Theater, which is right at the base of the hill, ascending up to the Parthenon. Here's a quick picture I took of the sign in front of the theater. As you can see, it says Theater of Dionysus, the god of wine and festivities. Next, we ventured to this remnant of a temple, and in the next picture you'll see who it was dedicated to. This temple was dedicated to none other than Asclepius. I think I said that right. But he was the Greek god of medicine. So seeing the remnants of this temple was also an amazing sight to see. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I definitely fangirled a lot on this next part of the tour because we came across this amazing theater. As you can see, all of these seats were of stone, and the back end of the theater was of stone. But that's not the main reason why I was fangirling over this. What our tour guide said next literally had me into one of the most fangirl moments, probably honestly, in a long time for me. But she even said that they had a band that recently came to film a music video in this exact theater only a couple days prior. This band? Oh, it was just Coldplay, one of my favorite bands that I grew up listening to. I've seen Coldplay twice on tour, and I knew their new single just came out just before we got to Athens. And ironically enough, I was listening to it on the plane. So hearing that they filmed their music video here and then getting the chance to watch it at home and saying, I know exactly where that is, was pretty darn cool, if I don't say so myself. Not pictured in this scrapbook was the very tumultuous hike up the hill to see the Parthenon. Here was one of the buildings that, as you can see from new pieces of stone and marble, was being remodeled due to ongoing construction at the Parthenon. When I got up to the hill and I saw this, it honestly made it all worth it. Seeing such an integral part of Greek mythology and Greek history was amazing. And honestly, seeing something I learned about years ago in person was truly something I'll never forget. Here was a picture I took of Athena's temple, and I really particularly loved the women figurines and statues you see here, posed on the outside of the temple. In the next clip, I took a slow-mo video trying to show the full facade of Athena's temple, but the tall pillars rain towards the sky, and right there, yes, you can see all that right, is none other than Athena's olive tree. And I was so happy when I had the chance to see this, and our tour guide asked us if we knew what this tree was and the significance of it. I knew that it was Athena's olive tree, and seeing it right there in front of me, wow, that was really awesome. Here's another shot I got of Athena's temple with the sun's rays glistening in and that beautiful blue sky. It was absolutely one of the most amazing sights that I've seen in my life thus far. But while this next picture is shown, I want to tell you why this trip meant so much more to me on a personal level. When I was in 7th grade, I had one of the most amazing social studies teachers. His name was Mr. Sowizerall, or as we called him, Mr. Swizz. Not Swiss like the cheese, but Swizz with 2 Z's. That kind of rhymes. Anyways, Mr. Swizz was so passionate about Greek mythology and Greek and Roman history that when we learned about Greece, he divided our class into Athens, Sparta, and all of the other segments and places of Greece, Delphi. We even had a class oracle that he made hide in the closet and tell fortunes for our class. It was one of the more prominent moments of my life where I realized that I wanted to help others and be a teacher. But what was most noticeable for me was Swizz's love of teaching Greek and Greek history. So as I stood in front of the Parthenon and I took it all in, I thought of how much Swizz would like to see it. I'm not gonna cry. Swizz meant such a huge part to me, and he still does to this day, and I can't wait to show him these pictures, because I'm sure me talking about my experience would make him realize and see that his teaching went so far beyond the confines of Cedar Crest Middle School. At the end of the school year, when we all left, and it was time to say goodbye to Mr. Swizz, I will always remember that Swizz told me to be a Tigger. He loved Winnie the Pooh, and he had so many stuffed animals. And it was my goal that day, as I left his classroom, to channel that, whatever it is, whatever I do, to maintain that positive outlook, to bring happiness and bring joy in all that I do. But now, as I sit back and see all these photos from the trip, I can't help but think of how much joy he brought to me. Here's a picture of the Greek flag waving at the lookout point of the Parthenon. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go out and look because look at all those people. And we had to move on anyways. Here was a picture of one of the very first, I believe it was a Corinthian column. Look at all of the intricate details. It was, again, so surreal to see all of this in person. Now, I knew I had to include this in my slideshow because it was a very funny moment of the tour, but this was at the Roman Agora, where we saw the very first public restroom. Yes, you're seeing that right. Those are toilets. LOL. This was the Temple of Hephaestus. This was in the Greek Agora, and as you can see here in the picture following next to it, I also got some really amazing pictures of Hephaestus's temple. It was also very, very detailed and very well preserved. Here's another shot of it here, and towards the back you can see the etchings of animals on the top of the temple's ceiling. A quick kitty break, a kitty picture of a kitty cat we found in the Greek Agora, because come on, look at how cute, it was so cute. I loved seeing all the cats. This was a picture of the crypt and casket of a young Greek infant, as you can see depicted by the children playing on the casket's sides. After our very busy day at the Acropolis, we ended our night with a wonderful dance show, as you can see with the dancers pictured here in their traditional Greek dance attire. All of the dancers were so amazing and they captivated our attention the whole performance. Next day, it was time to go to Aegina Island. Here we go! When our ferry arrived on Aegina Island, we were at its port, and I saw this beautiful ship, and I loved the name. Calypso, of course, in true Greek fashion. One of the main features of the island that Aegina Island was famous for, its pistachio gelato. And oh my goodness, as you can see by this picture here, all of the flavors looked very, very scrumptious. This was the boat that we took over to Aegina Island. Shout out to Constantine for helping us out on that one, or else we would have missed our ferry. LOL. This was a picture I took as we were leaving the island. As you can see, this was the main town with two centers of the church in its heart. And of course, our day ended none other with a beautiful Greek sunset. This was one of the moments I was so excited for. And boy, did it not disappoint either. Next, we ventured to our final destination, Santorini, Greece. Yes, here's another candid picture of me that's now my new profile picture on pretty much all of my social media platforms, but this was the view from our hotel. I mean, come on, all of us got dressed up, we all took pictures of each other. It was a very fun time for us to have before we went to our first event of the night. Our first event, and I guess I should say final event of the night, one in Santorini, was going to see this big fat Greek wedding show. Here is the picture I took at the end. I was so proud of this picture. I mean, not only does the cast look amazing, but it was just such a fun and very unique, vibrant show that showcased the Greek culture, I think, very well. I remember us going to this, and we had no idea what to expect going in. But once we arrived, I had no clue that this was going to be an immersive experience. All I thought was that I was going to sit down, have some tapas, and hear some musicians play some songs and sing along. I was wrong. Basically, we went into this building that was made to look like a house. And all of these musicians and all of these actors and actresses that you see here were playing these characters and were running around the house, running rampant, arguing with each other, using people as like walls to hide behind. It was the most chaotic and most unique experience that I think we had on the trip. None of us really knew what to expect, but we were laughing the whole night. I think Amy thought that I was scared throughout this event, but in the end, it did push me out of my comfort zone, but it was something so fun and so unique that honestly, I'm not going to forget as a part of this trip. Once we had the little introductions to the characters and they were running rampant inside the house, we were invited outside the house to a beautifully lit outdoor seating area, which is where we had the wine and Greek tapas while they continued to play songs and the actors and actresses sang along. And yes, at one point, Nate and Colin were called up to dance. I have a clip of that, but I didn't put it in this movie. Um, Please don't hate me. I kind of hate myself for not putting it in here, but this movie's already an hour long as it is. So I'll just tell the story instead of how they got recruited up there by one of the actresses and they were pretty much forced to slow dance with them. And as a woman, it was one of the funniest sights for me to see because of how awkward they looked, in all respect to them. But we ended up ending the show by smashing plates and dancing and drinking. Whew, what a night to end the first night in Santorini. And the next day was going to be pretty busy as well. The next day, we visited this ancient village that, as you can clearly see, has a lot of ruins with it. There's our group as we were kind of looking around when we walked in, but I was truly astonished by what I saw. I have never seen such well-preserved ruins as these. Here, you see a 3D map of the building and how it encompasses these ruins, from all of the different buildings to structural posts and everything of sorts. Some you could even see windows and footprints of where current archaeologists are still excavating it, which I thought was really cool. Some even found these vases pictured here, which were beautiful, and I couldn't help but wonder what life was like that back then. Next, we visited the Red Beach, which is one of the more famous beaches on the island of Santorini, as you can see by the reddish hue on the sand, coming from the sediment of the rocks behind it. This beach is technically banned to tourists because of rocks falling a couple years back, but some were still there anyways. Here's another cute picture of a little kitty that I took. Well, I didn't take the cat. I just took another cute picture. I mean, come on. Look at how good it turned out. Next up on the bus tour, we visited the oldest city on the island of Santorini, called the village of Megalahori. Here is a bell tower that we saw as we entered the town. The town was beautifully architected, with beautiful churches and the standard, well, not standard, but the traditional blue domes you see in pictures of Santorini. After we visited the town, we went to the Black Sand Beach, which was also one of the more well-known beaches. And yes, the sand was blazing hot because the sand has remnants of volcanic ash from when the island erupted thousands of years ago. Our day then concluded with a group of friends and I going to this restaurant in which we saw this beautiful sunset from the rooftop deck. Wow, this was what I was most looking forward to, and it honestly didn't disappoint. It is so pretty. The next day was our symposium on ancient instrument making, and I want to take a little more time in my audiovisual scrapbook to describe this experience, because it was truly one that I cherished the most on the trip. Here you see a picture of the courtyard that surrounded the building in which we entered. It had so many herbs and fresh fruit growing from the trees, and it was a beautiful, serene, and peaceful area. The girl who owned the place said that she wanted to create it in homage because, if you look in this picture here, which will gradually lower so you can see the doors, this place used to be a winery. Therefore, the owner, and I feel horrible because I also forget her name, she built this place and turned the winery into a place where music and festivities could thrive. So, in the courtyard area, in the picture before, she would serve drinks and food. Here's a picture I found on the inside of the building, and yes, I believe that's a person playing what looks to be a bagpipe, but has a goat. I thought it was kind of funny. Maybe that's in homage because the bagpipe can sound like a goat. I'm not too quite sure on that, but I saw it lurking in the corner, and I thought, why is it lurking in the corner? It's really kind of funny. So I took a picture of it, because why not? Here, in this little alcove, laid a library. Now, when we think of a reading nook in the US, I kind of visualize something like this, but some people usually have theirs in front of a window or just a little space. This is an actual nook. It's a little cave, and I loved every single little detail. The stone floors, the built-in shelves in the stone. It was so beautiful. Now, as you stare at this beautiful image of the coast of Santorini, I want to talk a little bit about what actually went on during the symposium. Now, you're probably wondering, why don't you have any pictures or videos of the performances that were given? Well, simply put, we were forbidden. And when I heard that, I thought, how could I not take pictures and videos? I mean, after all, this was a trip. I needed to log the memories. I needed to use this for my final project, of course. But not recording and not taking any pictures made me so invested in what the man, the owner's husband, did. I forget his name also, but he was remarkable. I couldn't keep my eyes off of him as he played these ancient instruments with such precision, accuracy, and such musicianship. When he pulled out the first instrument that used to be played by the goddess Athena, with the two wooden pipes, both of which he put into his mouth, I was absolutely floored at how he accomplished such a beautiful and captivating sound. As he talked about the Greek history and Greek mythology, he discussed how the gods were in connection to the instruments, and how topics such as astronomy and the planets were even seen to align with music and musical instruments. It was honestly something that made so much sense to me, and I couldn't help but put the puzzle pieces together as he continued talking and performing. Truly, the symposium was one of the best experiences that I've had as a musician in a long time. And I'm so proud to say that I was so invested and so sad when we had to leave. I definitely want to go there again one day. The next day, a group of friends and I went on a volcanic boat cruise to the volcano and to see the hot springs that are in connection with Santorini. But first, we came across these cute little dudes. Well, the story of that is actually funnier than you think. You see, when we left to embark to get to the port to catch our ship, we decided to take the long trail down to the port instead of the cable car, which I was hesitant about, but I didn't want to be a party pooper. So we all ventured down this steep hill, because practically we descended the entire cliff of the island of Santorini. And let me tell you, I slipped at least 2 to 3 times. Fell on my butt, my water went everywhere. It didn't spill, I had the cap on, but it was still a very painful experience. But the thing that made it somewhat sweet was that we finally got to see these guys. these cute little lads, the donkeys of Santorini, which were in every single souvenir store and every single fridge magnet you could find. But up until that point, we never saw them. So when we came down this hill and we saw donkey upon donkey upon donkey, it only seemed fitting that I smiled. Yes, they were adorable, but there was also shit going down that entire hill. Anyways, we then finally made it to the island, and here's a picture I took of the Greek flag on our ship waving in the breeze. You can see the black volcanic ash behind it, but the water was crystal blue. Here is the view from our hotel room again. This was our final night, and I just felt fitting to take one final picture because I thought it was a gorgeous view. It is time for a food review. Food review. You're probably laughing at me right now because I'm literally reviewing a cinnamon bun, but this isn't any cinnamon bun, this is a Cinnabon. This was my first time having a Cinnabon, and oh, I was so hungry to that point because we didn't eat breakfast, and I wolfed that thing down. It was so good. My only complaint was that the icing was cream cheese, and I don't like cream cheese, so I would give it, I don't know, a 6 out of 10. Yes, you can laugh that I put this in my final project video, but nothing says it like a nice school trip when your 10-hour flight gets delayed an additional 2 hours while you were on the airplane waiting to take off from the airport. No, that's right, we weren't even in the airport. We couldn't do anything for 2 hours. We were already boarded on the plane, and we were stationary for 2 hours. I took a nap, and when I woke up and I saw we were still in the same place, I was like, what is going on? The girl that was sitting next to me told me that they kept saying, oh, we'll take off in 20 minutes. Oh, we'll take off in 20 minutes. And I opened my app and I see this. And our 10-hour flight turned into a 12-hour one. So, while the trip was amazing, I think this was a sign that I just needed to go home at that point. And that concludes the end of my audio-visual scrapbook. And yes, I did come home to this sassy beagle face. Thanks, Stella. I love you.